Welcome back to the series on Take-Home Assignment 2. We've just finished question 5, and now we're going to work on question 7. The good news is, from here on out, 7 and 13, we no longer need to do mathematical models. We could, they would just take far too long, and it's just not worth it. Speaking of far too long, this problem's challenging, so let's get to it. So again, this is off-house manufacturing. We are trying to basically ship items from our manufacturing facility to 20 cities, to each of 20 cities. We have 7 carriers that have made bids on one or more of the different cities, and then of course that's all of this. Those bids informations are collected in this table, and then the demand of how many truckloads will be shipped to each city is listed here. For sake of convenience, we're going to need this number of carriers required later. And I used this, but actually it is not useful. So I'm just going to delete it so it's not distracting. It's not helpful. Okay. So let's just get started. The first thing we have here is our carrier chosen. So do we allow ourselves to use carrier 1, yes or no? Which I have this set to 1, but actually we need to start out with 3 carriers. We are told that we only can have 3 carriers. So let's just, for the way I usually do things, let's just put a 1 for everywhere for our binary variables. And then we'll just fill the spreadsheet out from there and let Solver resolve our infeasibility. So how many carriers do we have? Well, that is simply the sum of our binary decision variables. How many carriers we were supposed to have is a reference to the number of carriers required. This is really truly the maximum number. You could technically use less if you wanted, although I'm pretty sure in this case it doesn't make a difference if you use less than or equal to versus equal to. I think it gets the same answer. But properly speaking, you could do less. Management just wants you to limit it to 3 carriers. Okay, so now down here we have a large table of more binary variables. 1 if we give a bid to carrier 1, and 0. So if you give city 1 to carrier 1, then you put a 1 in the currently highlighted cell. If you don't, then you put a 0. So I'm going to put 1s everywhere, which is ridiculous, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it for now. So I've copied the first cell, I'm highlighting the whole table, and I'm pasting in the 1s just to have a place to go. So the number of bids granted per city is clearly a sum of the carriers. Now, what I did have number of bids allowed in the city, this has to be 1 for something else that I'm going to do to work. But your office did tell you that the number of bids can only be 1 for each city. And so I'll just fill this down. Okay. Which of course should be 7 all the way across. Oh no, this needs to be a copy and not a filled series. So there we go. So using my fill options, change from fill series to copy cells. Okay, so far we have our decision variables all set up and our first couple of constraints. Okay, number of bids granted. So we need to make sure that we are only giving bids to a carrier if that carrier has been chosen, kind of like the fixed setup cost sort of thing. So I'm going to use, for my artificial constraint, remember before you could pick just an arbitrarily large number, or you can pick the right-hand side value of the constraint. Well, in this case, there are only 20 cities. So what I'm going to do, rather than type in the number of cities, I'm going to be a little bit extra here and use a count A function. You can just type in 20. It'll work just fine. But this will give me the number of cities, which again is not really necessary. But so that's absoluted, and I multiply it by my decision variable. And so I know that I cannot grant any more bids than 20, assuming I have chosen the carrier, and I can't give any at all if I don't choose the carrier. And so I will fill this all the way across, and hopefully I should still have a sum. Counting that times that gives me 20. Okay. Now, something else that we need to pay attention to, where there are zeros in here, that is implying that the company did not bid on that. They did not offer to provide that service. So we cannot give them a bid if they did not bid for it. So here we just need to sum what corresponds to these values. So city 1 through 10. That's the only one for carrier 1. Carrier 2, we need to avoid city 1, and then everything after city 11 except for city 14. That's kind of complicated, but okay. So avoid city 1, avoid, cities 11 through 13, right? 11 through 13, and then 15 through 20. So a little trick here, you can put different ranges within the sum function, and it works just fine. Okay, keep going. This is the same as the first one. In fact, I'm going to be lazy and just copy and paste it. No. There we go. So this is the same as city 1. I know that, so I'm going to be very careful in my copy and paste. But hey, that'll do the job. Save me some time. Alright, so I need a new sum formula. I need cities 1 through 6. I need cities 13 through 17. And 19 through 20. So this is tedious, but we just go through and do one at a time. Oh, carrier 5, bid on all cities. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that one at all. I'm just going to put a, I guess I'll just put a 0 there. It doesn't really matter. Carrier 6 didn't bid on very much, so we're getting 6 and down. All of those. And finally, carrier 7. Simply the sum of city 2 and city 4. Okay, so all of that very exciting mess has to be less than or equal. Well, I should say it has to be precisely 0. Okay, must be exactly 0. All right, we're almost there now. So, accepted bid dollar per truckload. Now, since we know we're only going to pick one, provider, one carrier, then I'm going to take a shortcut. So now the way that the textbook, the publisher did it, is different. So my way is shorter, but only works if you restrict to one carrier. But there's lots of things that have to be changed if you don't have just one carrier, so it's okay. It's okay. So, accepted bid dollars per truckload. I'm simply going to sum product the city 1 decision variables times city 1 bids. Because I know that only one of the cells that I've selected in blue, my decision variables here, only one of them will be a 1, and all other 6 will be zeros, which means that it will multiply and only give me the cost that I want and none of the others. Now, right now it won't look right because I'm getting a huge amount of dollars because it's adding all 3 of them together. But that's okay. It doesn't actually matter. Now, my demand per city is simply a reference to my destination demand, and then I fill all of these down. So just to double check everything's working, sum product, this is city 16. City 16 times city 16. Looks good. And finally, my total shipping cost is the sum product of my bids per truckload, or my bid dollars per truckload, and my shipping cost. Now, obviously, this is the worst possible case scenario, $1,827,360. Okay, so I'm going to pause it here. We'll pop over to a new video. We'll do the solver dialog box and finish part B.